Chapter 361, Leaving the Battlefield. There might be people existing in the world who had the guts to attack the deity statues, but they were rare and few in between. Within the land of South Morning, there were naturally no berserkers who had this sort of presence and this sort of courage, and there was only person among the shamans who had this sort of power and presence. That person was the strongest among the shamans, whose level of cultivation had broken through end, the great patriarch who was the pinnacle of the shaman tribe. Only he would have this sort of presence, he who had fought alone against the three great berserkers in the past, and though gravely injured, had not died, had only fallen into deep sleep. He was also the only one who would not care about Su Ming being the sign of the first god of berserkers and would throw that spear out in an attempt to destroy the statue of the god of berserkers, because he was the great patriarch who wanted to prevent all future berserkers from ever entering the bone sacrifice realm forever. That spear sliced through the air, and wherever it went, the sky would seem to be split apart, revealing a large crack. With a presence that was difficult to describe with words, that spear appeared right before the disappearing deity statue of bone sacrifice with a whistle and crashed into it. There were no ripples, neither were there any rumbles. The deity statue of bone sacrifice might have been pierced through by that spear, but there was not a hint of damage on it. It merely cast a freezing glare at that black fog before it vanished without a trace. If our deity statues could be destroyed so easily, the berserker tribe would not have existed till this date. If the immortals can't do it, then how could you old Mo Luo? You're just a dog of the immortals, an old voice stated from Sky Mist City. At the same time, a middle-aged man in long blue robes walked into the sky. He did not look old, but his eyes contained an aged and ancient look that was formed after living through an endless amount of time. He looked very handsome, and his features looked rather similar to Qian Lan Meng. Besides, only some of your clones have woken up. Your real body must still be asleep, yes? Do you think that with just a clone, you can step into Sky Mist City? As the middle-aged man spoke, he walked into the sky and stood beside Su Ming, who was just about to retreat. Back down and go to Sky Mist City. I have some questions to ask you later. The middle-aged man's voice was calm, but there was a tone in his voice that said he would not tolerate any disobedience. His eyes also casually swept past the strand of hair wound around Su Ming's right index finger. Respect appeared on Su Ming's face along with a hint of fear. He quickly lowered his head and obeyed, then obediently backed down to fly towards Sky Mist City. Almost the instant he did so, a cold snort came from the fog where the long spear had rushed out. With a whistle, that fog charged straight towards the blue-robed middle-aged man. The sky instantly shuddered, and the battle resumed. The three powerful shamans followed suit at the same time to finish the fight that was interrupted just now and started clashing against the 6 berserkers in the sky. The people from the 2 races on the ground also started fighting against each other once again. Right then, a loud screech burst forth from the land of the shamans. It was the mackerel pike that swam in the sea of clouds which Su Ming had seen during the day. The size of the mackerel pike could not be measured by feet. At that moment, it had revealed a part of its body from the horizon in the distance, along with an astounding presence. The woman standing on it held a green bamboo with some holes in it. She placed it by her lips and blew gently into it, and a string of notes drifted into the air. The instant those notes echoed in the air, the vengeful spirits of the dead from the entire battlefield started gathering out of nowhere. The corpses littered everywhere on the ground also started crawling up slowly. A thick aura of death enveloped the area in an instant. The sounds of battle thundered viciously in the battlefield. The appearance of the mackerel pike had also caught the attention of the 8 old men from the walls on Sky Mist City. The instant chaos appeared on the battlefield due to the gathering of the aura of death and the corpses who started crawling up. Su Ming, who was flying towards Sky Mist City, suddenly stopped moving. His eyes sparkled, and without a moment of hesitation, he quickly changed his direction. With his full speed, he turned into a long arc and charged towards the southern war zone. His actions still caught some attention even with the chaos happening on the ground, but because he was going to the southern war zone, most of the people who were keeping close watch on him became uncertain. By the time doubt rose within these people who were watching him, Su Ming had already arrived at the southern war zone. He stopped for a while, disappearing into the fighting crowd, then with one move, he reappeared on the other side of the crowd, coming face to face with a shaman who came forth to kill him. Su Ming walked past him, and when he did so, His fist shot out like a gust of wind, and he struck the shaman's chest, causing the man's body to tremble and cough out blood. Then he fell to ground dead. Su Ming was very cautious. He had no idea just how many people were watching. Even if he was moving quickly through the crowd, he could only shake of those who were not that strong. The true powerful warriors, especially those in the Berserker Soul realm, could somewhat lock onto his position. If he did anything out of hand, someone would definitely come searching for him. The battlefield was in a slight state of chaos at that moment. The vengeful spirits that filled the air, the corpses that crawled up from the ground, and the aura of death that surrounded them caused the area to turn hazy. Su Ming fought without stop, just like the other berserkers. It was as if he did not return to Sky Mist City because he wanted to continue fighting, not because he was trying to run away or anything. Gradually, as Su Ming continued moving, he seemed to have arrived at the edge of the southern war zone by chance. When he arrived at that place, a distinct, uneasy feeling filled his senses, as if there were ants running down his entire back. Clearly, this was a sign that there were powerful warriors watching him from some unknown spot, and their gazes were filled with hostility, or else he would not be having this feeling. Without batting an eye, Su Ming retreated with a fellow berserker by his side who had killed until he lost control of his reason. It's just as I expected. I'm in trouble because I have something precious. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. I need a chance where everyone's attention is shifted away. Su Ming frowned and resumed fighting, but he did not wait for too long before a chance like this appeared on the battlefield. The ground trembled. It started off with light tremors, but soon, the ground started trembling with a force that could cause mountains to shatter and the earth to crack. The tremors came from the eastern war zone located right before Sky Mist City and continued spreading outwards. Soon, as a muffled roar shot out from the ground, all the people from the eastern war zone quickly withdrew to both sides of the place. A gigantic crack split the ground, and a humongous, ferocious beast in the form of a snake that was 100,000 feet long and several thousands of feet wide charged out from within. The revealed part of that creature alone was 10,000 feet long, but it was not a snake, because it did not have eyes. It was a gigantic thing that looked like an earthworm. Its entire body was purplish red and there was a large amount of mucus dripping down its skin, causing all the people who were splashed by that to let out shrill cries of pain while their bodies immediately started rotting. That 10,000 feet creature only had one mouth, and as of then, it opened it wide, revealing the eerily sharp teeth inside. It howled towards the sky, and with one swing, it flung its gigantic body against Sky Mist City. But that was not all. Almost the instant that creature flung itself at Sky Mist City, a second crack appeared on the ground in the northern war zone. Another creature like this shot out, and as it howled, it flung its body vertically against Sky Mist City. At the same time, when the ground started trembling in the southern war zone, a crack suddenly formed not too far away from Su Ming. That crack seemed to possess an invisible pair of gigantic hands that tore it apart, causing it to suddenly widen and allow the third creature such as the previous two to charge out. Almost all of the powerful berserkers within the entire Sky Mist City could not help but turn their gazes towards the three terrifying creatures at that moment. It was also at that instant that Su Ming started retreating, and when he did, a glint appeared in his eyes. He saw the gigantic creature that shot out of the crack in the southern war zone opening its mouth as if it wanted to howl. Su Ming suddenly moved, and black smoke appeared under his feet. That black smoke rapidly gathered on his body and turned into a body that looked exactly the same as his. It was the transformed form of his phantom fork, and it had the exact same appearance as well as his presence. Once the phantom fork turned into Su Ming, it charged straight towards the howling creature. At that same time, Su Ming took a deep breath. A strong gust of wind suddenly burst forth from the spot within his body that stored wind. That wind swept through him, and his speed suddenly increased exponentially. Then he charged towards the south, straight towards the edge of the battlefield. Su Ming left behind a few afterimages on the ground, and when he reappeared, he was already several tens of thousands of feet away. With another flash, he charged towards the south. Almost the instant Su Ming sped forth with his full speed, an old man that had never given up on watching him from the walls of Sky Mist City instantly moved, with a glint in his eyes and a cold snort on his lips. His speed did not lose to Su Ming's, and in the blink of an eye, he was already 10,000 feet away from the wall. At the same time, there was also a dried-up old man among the shamans who took a step forward and turned into a wisp of green smoke. In an instant, he had already traveled 10,000 feet. The two of them chased after Su Ming, one behind the other. Su Ming spread out his divine sense as he traveled. His liquefied aura stored in the open passage in his body started circulating rapidly, causing his divine sense to instantly cover an area of several tens of thousands of feet, and he could also sense everything within that area incredibly clearly in a manner that far surpassed what he could do before. He clearly saw the two old men quickly chasing after him, and there was a distance of 30,000 something feet between him and them. Su Ming let out a cold harumph. He had already analyzed his situation previously and knew that he absolutely could not return to Sky Mist City. He would not take any risks in this matter and did not want to hand over the initiative to anyone's hands. It would be for the best if he had control over it himself. As he charged forward, the 4 berserker bones in him burst forth with the power belonging to those in the bone sacrifice realm, causing Su Ming's speed to abruptly increase by a fold, and in an instant, he widened the gap by 50,000 something feet. I have to widen the distance between us and shake them off, then leave the battlefield. The violent gust of wind formed by the provenance of wind in Su Ming's body started circulating rapidly once again, causing his speed to instantly increase by a large margin once more. His body was barely visible, and in the blink of an eye, he was gone. But the two people still continued chasing him. Chapter 362: Chase. As the three of them dashed forward, they gradually left the battlefield. The sounds of battle behind them slowly grew distant. Su Ming had managed to time his leave from the battlefield incredibly well. Or else there would definitely not just be 2 people chasing after him, there would be more, and with a high possibility of those old monsters from the middle stage of the Berserker Soul Realm appearing as well. Thank goodness this was just the beginning of the battle in Sky Mist City. With Sky Mist City's own protection, the city would not be conquered in a short period of time. There were also more warriors from the Berserker tribe who were moving towards the city, because the number of powerful Berserkers that were originally staying in the city itself were not many. It was the same for the shamans. The battle was going to continue and would not end in a short period of time. All of these things that were happening now were just them trying to probe for information from the other party. Su Ming activated his full speed and traveled through the land of the shamans like a gust of wind. The 2 men behind him pursued him relentlessly. However, they were also wary of each other and had split up, especially the old berserker. If it was not because Su Ming was just too big of a temptation for him, he would definitely not want to risk charging into the land of the shamans during war or entering too deep into their land. On the other hand, the old shaman's eyes were sparkling and a cold sneer was on his lips. Not only was he determined to capture Su Ming, he also wanted to kill the other person. With their own thoughts in their heads, the 2 charged forward, and as they did so, the 2 old men frowned. Su Ming's speed did not show a hint of stopping even after so long. Not only that, he was also becoming faster. But that was not all. As Su Ming continued flying before them, he was also going higher. The 2 of them could only follow, but once they reached a certain height, they found themselves facing a strong gust of wind existing in the sky that seemed to be above the 9 heavens. Once a person exceeded a certain level of speed with that wind around, it would definitely turn into a strong repelling force. In fact, if they went even faster, that gust of wind blowing right against their faces would slice against their bodies like knives and cause them intense pain. While one of them was at the initial stage of the Berserker Soul Realm and the other an End Shaman, if they were exposed to this sort of wind for an extended period of time, their speed would also be affected. Yet before their eyes, Su Ming was like a fish in the water. Not only did the strong wind resistance not slow him down, it instead made him faster. As he charged forward, he widened the gap between them until they were 80,000 feet away from each other in an instant. That distance between them was only going to continue growing. Once they were more than 100,000 feet apart, it would only become harder for the shaman to chase Su Ming down. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he lifted his right hand as he dashed forth. He clenched his fist before loosening it abruptly, and the instant his fingers unfurled themselves, wounds appeared on all 5 of them. 5 drops of blood flowed out at the same time. With the wind against them, the 5 drops of blood gathered together to turn into a small human. That small human's entire body shone with a red light, and once it appeared, a shrill sound rang out. Flames appeared on it as if burning away the power contained within the body. It charged forward. It was so quick that in an instant, it was already only 30,000 feet away from Su Ming. Then with another shrill cry, that small human shrank once again. When it shrank to the size of a palm, its speed increased exponentially, and this time, it appeared less than 1,000 feet behind Su Ming. That small human's body instantly exploded, and a drop of blood charged straight toward Su Ming. Right before the old shaman and that old berserker's eyes, they saw that drop of blood falling on Su Ming's back, causing him to shudder and cough out blood. In an instant, his speed abruptly fell. The old berserker's eyes sparkled and he drew a line in the air before him with his right hand. A strong ray of light gathered and turned into a runic symbol. The old man slammed his palm down on the flashing runic symbol, and it instantly disappeared. However, the space 10,000 something feet behind Su Ming distorted and the runic symbol instantly appeared. As it flickered, it exploded, turning into a wave of air that did not spread outwards, but instead turned into a wolf made of air waves that pounced on Su Ming with a howl. Bang! Su Ming coughed out blood again as if he was already incredibly weakened by this extended period of rapid flying. Now, as he was also heavily injured by those two old monsters, he could no longer fly and pummel to the ground. When he plunged down, his face was directed towards the two old men behind him, allowing the both of them to clearly see that not only was his face pale, completely bloodless, his eyes were also shut tight. Pain could be seen on his face, along with fatigue that could not be hidden away. The two old men would not have easily believed in it if that was all, but the chaos in Su Ming's qi and his weakness was something that could not deceive their senses. After all, Su Ming could not hope to compare to these two people in terms of everything besides his speed. The old shaman's eyes sparkled and he charged towards Su Ming, but just when he showed a sign that he was about to rush towards the youth, he lifted his right hand and swung it at the old berserker who was traveling on the other side. As he swung his arm outward, booming sounds reverberated in the air and a wave of ripples instantly appeared before him. The ripples rapidly spread out and closed in on the old berserker. That old berserker let out a cold snort, then bit his tongue and coughed out a mouthful of blood. It turned into a sea of blood that crashed into the incoming ripples, causing a large amount of booms to echo in the air. At the same time, the old shaman pointed at the plummeting Su Ming with his left hand, and immediately, a gentle wind charged towards Su Ming and went under him, causing his descent to slow down considerably. This did not mean that the old shaman was helping Su Ming. He was simply afraid that Su Ming would die when he fell down unconscious from the sky. If he died, then the losses would outweigh the gains. The two of the old men had already given up on chasing down the plummeting Su Ming and chose instead to first attack each other. Su Ming was already not a cause for them to worry about. As long as they got rid of the other, then the remaining person could capture him. Because Su Ming was already unconscious and could not run away. As these two people fought against each other and Su Ming plunged downwards, he suddenly opened his eyes. They were bloodshot and filled with exhaustion, but they were sparkling. He allowed himself to continue falling, and as he stared at the spot where the booming sounds were coming from in the sky, a cold smirk appeared on his lips. He continued staring until his body closed in on the ground and he crashed with a bang. The instant his body touched the ground, he shifted slightly, allowing himself to be completely uninjured by the fall. He laid down on the mountainside, still as a rock. With their power, the chances of either one of them dying should not be high, but it's not completely impossible. If the old berserker dies, then I'll be up against the shaman. Escaping him will be slightly more difficult. After all, this person is a native to the area compared to me. But if the old berserker wins, it'll be easier. Just as Su Ming was busy thinking, his expression suddenly changed and he narrowed his eyes into slits. Right before his eyes, he saw the old shaman quickly retreating from the spot where the two of them were fighting. As he retreated, he coughed out a mouthful of blood, and when the old berserker chased him down, the shaman lifted his right hand swiftly. As red light shone, a long red spear charged towards Su Ming from the sky with a howl. The long spear traveled incredibly quickly and closed in on Su Ming in an instant. Judging from where the tip was pointed, the spear was aiming for the center of his brows. The old berserker's expression changed drastically and he instinctively moved, wanting to stop that long spear. But once he stopped it, the old shaman would escape, and once he escaped, then it would mean that the old berserker's return to the land of the berserkers would be filled with all sorts of dangers. However, if he did not save Su Ming and he died, then all his efforts in chasing him down would be wasted. This was a difficult decision, but the old berserker still managed to make up his mind in an instant. He did not take the risk but instead charged straight towards the old shaman. To him, his life was the most important thing. Once he killed that shaman and destroyed all possibility of him sending any information out, then he could cautiously go back to the berserker tribe. Even if Su Ming died, he could still examine his corpse, and he might be able to find some clues from those items as well. Almost the moment he chased down the old shaman, Su Ming swiftly flew up from the ground and dodged that long spear charging towards him. He lifted his right hand and quickly popped the thing he had been holding onto since a long while ago into his mouth. It was a drop of liquid, a drop of sea marrow. The instant it entered his mouth, Su Ming's exhausted body seemed to be pumped back full of life force. His power instantly recovered and his body overflowed with life force. A glint appeared in his eyes and he charged in the distance at full speed. In an instant, he was already 10,000 feet away. The old berserker who was chasing the shaman immediately noticed that Su Ming's chi had recovered. The old shaman's expression also changed. They had examined Su Ming's condition thoroughly just now, but had absolutely not expected that he would be in possession of a medicine that would allow him to recover so swiftly. This sort of medication was incredibly rare and it would be highly difficult for a normal berserker in the awakening realm to obtain such a thing, and it would also be a complete waste if they took it. Damn it! Struggle appeared in the old berserker's eyes once again. Should he chase down Su Ming or kill the shaman? The old shaman's eyes shone and without any hint of hesitation, he charged into the distance. Behind him, the old berserker gritted his teeth and chased after. He had to first kill that old shaman, or else a crisis that could endanger his life would appear. Only when he had reduced all threats to his person to the minimal degree would he feel safe going after Su Ming's life. Su Ming flew at full speed, sighing. This sort of deception where he made himself look weakened could only be used one, and it would only be effective the first time he used it. His plan had only been successful because his two pursuers were wary and hated each other, or else this would not have worked. If they continued chasing him down, then this method would lose its effectiveness. After all, while a person who had already reached the level of the berserker soul realm might occasionally make a mistake, those mistakes would definitely not happen too frequently. Now, even if Su Ming used any other methods, he would still be unable to compare to these old monsters who were already wary of him. His experience was simply still not enough. I might need to use the power of the god of berserkers. Su Ming gritted his teeth. Chapter 363, Berserker Soul's Killing Intent. There was a powerful gust of wind at the highest part of the sky. This wind was the strongest wind that could only be found high up in the sky. If anyone traveled at a high speed under it, they would find it incredibly hard to endure through it. Their bodies would start feeling as if they were being torn apart. This was the power of the wind. Even Su Ming, who had the provenance of wind in his body and also stored wind inside body, found it hard to last for a prolonged period of time under this high wind. Once half a day had gone by under his continued charge, he found that it was already too difficult for him to continue, and with a turn, he charged towards a lower altitude. To Su Ming, the wind in the sky became stronger the higher he was. On the other hand, if he was at a lower altitude, the wind would be significantly weaker. As he charged forward, he flew towards the deeper parts of the land of the shamans. He did not stop even for a single instant, and continued dashing forward at this speed even when night arrived. The dark sky turned bright, then turned dark once again. Most of the places Su Ming went to were remote areas, and since this was a time of war, most of the shamans from the tribes in this large area had went away. That was why even though Su Ming had been running away for 3 days straight, he had not run into too many members of the shaman tribe. Besides, he was simply too fast. Even if he did run into other shamans, they would usually only see a long arc and could not tell whether he was a shaman or a berserker, causing him to be able to travel unhindered. Su Ming only stopped during the 4th evening and opened up a cave as a place for him to stay on a large plain. With exhaustion filling every inch of his body, he sat down inside that cave. He had already gone past his limit with 4 days of flight. If it had not been because he had been taking in medicine all this while, he wouldn't have lasted till now. By then, he had already lost his direction, and he also did not know where exactly he was in the land of the shamans. However, as long as he could shake off that old berserker, all of this was worth it. Su Ming panted harshly and evened out the chaotic power in his body as he remained sitting with his legs crossed. The period of time since he reached the bone sacrifice realm was too short, and as he had been flying rapidly for such a long period of time, his power had gradually started to show signs of instability. I've been flying for 4 days, and that old berserker has gone off to kill that shaman. Since we went off in 2 separate directions, he should not be able to find me now, but I still need to be careful in case he has other tricks up his sleeve. Su Ming closed his eyes, but he did not dare immerse himself completely in exercising his breathing. He kept his divine sense spread outward and slowly started circulating the power of bone sacrifice within him. Time gradually passed by. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. On the 5th day, Su Ming opened his eyes. The exhaustion in his eyes had gone down slightly. He took a deep breath. The power of bone sacrifice within him had finally become stable and was no longer like 5 days ago, where it was showing signs of deteriorating. But in case of emergencies, I can't stay in this place for long. A look of caution appeared on Su Ming's face. He stood up and was just about to leave the place when his expression drastically changed. Within his outspread divine sense, he could clearly sense a strong wave of ripples charging towards him from 100,000 feet away. Naturally, the person within those ripples was the old berserker. I knew it. He had a way to find me. Su Ming did not hesitate and shot up from the ground, then charged out with gritted teeth in midair. The old berserker looked as calm as ever. He had a cold sneer on his lips, but his face was rather pale. Clearly, killing the shaman and chasing after him for a few days had also caused him to be injured by the time he found Su Ming. However, he believed that even though he was injured, it was still incredibly easy for him to capture his target. You can't escape. A glint appeared in the old berserker's eyes and he relentlessly chased after Su Ming. The two shot through the sky one after the other. There was 100,000 feet between them, but that distance was gradually being shortened. 2 hours later, when there were only 80,000 something feet between them, a chilling glint appeared in the old berserker's eyes, and a mocking sneer formed on his lips. Almost the instant that mocking look appeared, the old man's body trembled. As he trembled, popping sounds abruptly came from his body. It was as if his bones were knocking into each other. The old man's face instantly turned purplish red and veins also started popping up on his skin. All of this was soon followed by the old man letting out a roar towards the sky. With a single shagai it was as if a crack had appeared in the sky. He flew so indescribably quickly that he was already faster than Su Ming by several fold. Right when he created a crack in the air before him, his body disappeared. A life-threatening sense of danger shot up in Su Ming's mind. He came to an abrupt halt and forcefully changed his direction. He no longer went forward, but instead retreated. This forceful change in direction made blood flow out of Su Ming's mouth, but the instant he started retreating, the air before him looked as if it was shattering. As if he was forcing his way through, the old berserker appeared before Su Ming out of thin air. This sort of movement could not even be considered as speed anymore, but was more like an instant warp. The old man who had come out also coughed up blood. His face was pale, but his expression was ferocious. Once he appeared less than 100 feet away from Su Ming, he swiftly lifted his right hand, and instantly, a sea of blood surged up beyond him. That sea of blood covered a circular area of 1,000 feet and charged at Su Ming like a tidal wave. As that tidal wave surged forward, it adopted a shape that seemed like a blood wave with its mouth wide open as it pounced on Su Ming to devour him. All of this might have seemed to happen over a long period of time, but in truth, it happened in an instant. It had taken less than 2 breaths for the old man to warp to this spot 80,000 feet away and cast that divine ability. As for Su Ming, he had only managed to retreat 100-something feet after forcefully changing his direction. The intense, life-threatening sense of danger made Su Ming's skin crawl. The world before him became completely dyed in blood when that blood wolf completely filled his vision, howling and pouncing on him. A strong power that made Su Ming's heart and soul tremble spread from that blood wolf. This was the power of those in the Berserker Soul realm. This was the power of the divine ability belonging to that old monster in the Berserker Soul realm. To Su Ming, who had just recently reached the Bone Sacrifice realm, it was impossible for him to clash against this sort of divine ability. But it was also difficult for him to dodge it, because as that blood wolf closed in on him, An oppressive feeling enveloped the area as if it had sealed off the place where Su Ming was. The shadow of death covered Su Ming's entire body and his eyes instantly turned red. The blue armor of bone sacrifice immediately manifested on him with runes aligned within the armor. At this moment of life and death, Su Ming's potential seemed to be infinitely brought out, and with just one attempt, he managed to align all the runes successfully. Right then, the Blood Wolf pounced on Su Ming, defended by the divine general armor. He shuddered violently and coughed out a mouthful of blood. It was as if 10,000 mountains had crashed into him. His chi surged within him and his power started shattering. Even the 4 berserker bones started cracking. What made Su Ming's mind go off in loud booms was that he felt a force of absorption that was difficult to resist coming from the Blood Wolf's mouth. It was as if it wanted to suck away his soul, but thank goodness, he had the divine general armor. His divine general armor struggled for a few breaths before it shattered. Su Ming was flung backwards violently, but his actions were not completely useless. The strength of the divine general armor, coupled with the alignment of the runes, caused Su Ming to only be heavily injured under that hit from the Berserker Soul Realm. He did not die immediately. He was continuously pushed back by that huge force like a kite with a broken string. As he coughed out blood, the Blood Wolf howled and rushed forward once again. However, that Blood Wolf was no longer as distinct as it was before. Once it clashed into Su Ming's divine general armor, the Blood Wolf fell into a semi-transparent state, but even so, killing or capturing the completely defenseless Su Ming was still a piece of cake for it. The old berserker's pupils shrank. He did not expect that Su Ming's divine general armor would be able to resist his divine ability. Even though that armor had shattered, he had not been able to instantly retrieve Su Ming's soul. Glimmering light. With a cold harumph, the old man took a step towards Su Ming. Almost the moment he walked forward, that semi-transparent Blood Wolf caught up to Su Ming and continued attacking him, looking as if it would not disappear if it did not retrieve his soul. In the blink of an eye, the Blood Wolf closed in on him and was just about to ram against his defenseless body, but right when the Blood Wolf got closer, a big bell abruptly appeared around Su Ming, Han Mountain Bell. The Blood Wolf instantly knocked onto the bell. Rumbling sounds shook the sky and earth. Loud bell chimes hummed in the air, and the strong chimes made even the old berserker freeze for a moment. The instant he froze, a black line suddenly shot out from the spot where Han Mountain Bell and the Blood Wolf crashed into each other. With a shocking speed, it charged straight towards the center of the old man's brows. However, that old berserker was a monster who had already reached the initial stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. In an instant, he had recovered, and with a swing of his arm, he caught the incoming black line. However, what awaited him was a sharp pain on his palm and blood spilling out of his lips. That black line pierced through his palm, but similarly, when the black line shot through the old man's palm, it also suffered the power of the palm strike. Its tail instantly exploded and it fell backwards. What is this? The old berserker's palm was a bloody mess and shock appeared on his face. Almost the instant he was injured by that black line, the Blood Wolf's gigantic body crumbled and dissolved beside Han Mountain Bell. Han Mountain Bell also shrank in an instant and fell back into Su Ming's body. Su Ming coughed up blood once again. He was already gravely injured, but he did not continue running away. Instead, with bloodshot eyes, he charged against the old berserker as if he had gone insane. The distance between the both of them was not far to begin with, which was why Su Ming managed to close in on him right when the old berserker's palm was shot through and shock appeared on his face. By doing so, while it seemed as if Su Ming was running headlong into his own doom, his charge allowed him to arrive less than 30 feet away from the old berserker. Like a moth charging into a flame. With Su Ming's level of cultivation, his current move could only be described with those 7 words. However, if he did not do this, he would not be able to run away either and would still die. The willpower he had refined from the battlefield allowed his mind to not break down despite being under this intense life-threatening crisis. He counterattacked. Chapter 364, The Power of the God of Berserkers. The old berserker let out a cold snort. With a glint in his eyes, he lifted his left hand and swung it at Su Ming. That one swing caused the sea of blood beyond his body to surge high into the sky, but right at that moment, the old berserker's expression suddenly changed in a manner so great it had never happened before. Because the incoming Su Ming lifted his right hand and stretched out his index finger, the finger with the strand of hair containing the power of the god of berserkers wound around it. The finger that could destroy the sky and earth and contained a power that could make those in the berserker soul realm appalled. It was just a lift. It was a movement made to touch the sea of blood that was created with the power of his entire body. There was a hint of flame on the strand of hair on that finger. It was just those actions, and a terror that horrified the old berserker out of his wits burst forth from the depths of his heart uncontrollably. Ever since he reached the berserker soul realm, he rarely ran into things that made him this terrified. This terror even surpassed the fear he experienced when he gritted his teeth and took that one step that could very spell his doom when he had attained great completion in the bone sacrifice realm. This terror was something he had never encountered and experienced before in his life. This unique shock surpassed everything that he had ever experienced. It was like a judgment. This was judgment. It was as if the person standing before him was not the weak and fragile Su Ming, but was instead a person who radiated with supremacy. That person was looking at him, lifting his right hand, pointing towards him. That person was like the first god of berserkers. This was the judgment of the first god of berserkers. This was the finger of judgment that robbed him of his life, robbed him of his will, robbed him of everything that made him who he was. He could not bring up even an ounce of resistance before this finger, not even the slightest of thought to fight back. He even had the feeling that he was as weak as a layer of thin ice that would shatter the moment it was touched. That terror turned into a tidal wave that almost flooded his heart and soul, making the old berserker's pupils shrink. He let out a shrill cry and quickly retreated. This was an instinctive reaction. If he did not retreat, he would definitely die. If he did not retreat, even his own body would go against his own will. As his heart pounded in his chest, it suddenly seemed to have stopped. It was as if even his heart did not dare move under the power of that one finger. Almost the instant he retreated, blood poured out of the corner of Su Ming's lips. A glint suddenly appeared in his eyes. Just when the power of that one finger was about to be released and a small part of the strand of hair on his finger burned away, he immediately put down his finger. He had mentally prepared himself towards the might of the god of berserker's power beforehand, but even if he did prepare himself, he was still shocked by what he felt in his heart. Su Ming was unwilling to use such a mighty power to kill this berserker in the berserker soul realm before him. I can only use this twice, and I was forced out of the land of the berserkers because of the god of berserkers' power. If I use it once here, it's not worth it. The instant Su Ming put down his right index finger, green light shone at the center of his brows, and the small sword charged towards the old berserker. Su Ming did not linger around to look at the outcome. Instead, with one move, he charged towards the sky in the distance. As he traveled forth, he brought out some medicine and swallowed them, leaving far into the distance in the blink of an eye. The small virescent sword's speed was incredibly quick. It rushed towards the old berserker and pierced through his chest, and once it did so, it left with Su Ming. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared. Once Su Ming disappeared, the old berserker coughed out a mouthful of blood and lifted his head, revealing a complicated look formed through lingering fear and savageness. After a long while, he dipped his head down and looked at the puncture on his chest. His heart had been pierced through by that sword. If anyone else had this sort of injury, they would have died a long time ago. However, this wound was not fatal to that old monster in the berserker soul realm. With a complicated look, the old man stared in the direction Su Ming had left, and hesitation appeared on his face, but soon, the greed in his eyes vanquished his hesitation. He gritted his teeth but did not continue his chase. Instead, he flew down to the ground to begin healing himself. Power of the god of berserkers. This is the power of the god of berserkers. This is a power that has surpassed those within the berserker soul realm. If I have it, then no one in the berserker soul realm will be my equal. And the true use of this power isn't to kill, but to be used to gain an epiphany. A mad wave of greed appeared in the old man's eyes. If I can reflect on this power constantly once I have attained great completion in the berserker soul realm or have reached the later stage, then perhaps I will have a chance to break through the berserker soul realm. This power can drive all those monsters who have great completion in the berserker soul realm mad. The old man's breathing quickened, and his breathing tore at his wounds, but he had already long since ignored that pain. Right then, His mind was filled with the shock brought to him by the power of the god of berserkers. Su Ming's caution had allowed him to evade a life-threatening crisis. If he had been greedy and attacked once again while the old man was caught in a daze, then he would definitely have to use the power of the god of berserkers once again, or else once that old monster from the berserker soul realm launched a counterattack, he would be unable to take it. After all, he was still too weak. Besides, he could not always use the power of the god of berserkers. This power would be released when the strand of hair started burning. If he had to do this repeatedly, he would much rather kill that old man. That old man had temporarily given up on chasing him down. As that old man went to the ground to heal himself, Su Ming escaped in the sky. Blood continued flowing out of the corner of his mouth. If he did not have his medicine helping him, he would have collapsed a long time ago. After fleeing for 3 days straight, Su Ming plummeted to the ground abruptly. It was a grayish piece of land, and every inch of earth exuded an air of ruin. Once Su Ming crashed down with a bang, he coughed up blood once again. If I don't want to waste the power of the god of berserkers, then I must think of a way to kill that person. Su Ming wiped away the blood. Panting, he surveyed his surroundings. This place was completely empty. There was not a hint of a living soul here. That person's speed is far too astonishing. He actually managed to close up 80,000 feet in an instant. This is not a matter of speed anymore, he must be using another method. When Su Ming thought back on the fight 3 days ago, it still made his heart pound in fear. Berserker Soul. This is the Berserker Soul realm. Su Ming struggled up. Once he swept his gaze past the ground, he saw an endless amount of ravines and cracks on the plain. It was unknown how this strange terrain was formed. He stood there and watched for a long moment before lifting his right hand and patting a bag in his bosom. A red light instantly flew out from the bag and turned into the fire ape by his side. There was still a large amount of human heads tied around the fire ape's waist, and it held a rod in its paws. There was a nervous look on its face when it appeared, a clear sign that it had been paying attention to all the things Su Ming did while in the storage bag. Like that battle, like the appearance of the 2 deity statues, like the old monster from the Berserker Soul realm going after his life. Su Ming looked at the fire ape and saw a hint of terror in its eyes. In his silence, Su Ming lifted his right hand and swung it wide. The chain on the fire ape's neck was instantly released. The chain fell, causing the ape to immediately regain its freedom. The desire for freedom had been something the fire ape had been dreaming about ever since it was caught, but having it suddenly given to it like this made it momentarily stunned. I promised you that I will return you your freedom once I come to the land of the shamans. This is the land of the shamans. Be careful and don't get close to people. Before long, this place will go through a huge catastrophe. Perhaps you can find another way to survive with your intelligence. Go. Someone is after my life now, so I can't send you off. If we are ever fated to meet again, we will. Su Ming looked at the fire ape. No matter what, this ape was not Xiao Hong. Su Ming still knew that. That was why he would not force the fire ape to stay. Instead, he gave it freedom. The fire ape was momentarily stunned, then cast Su Ming a glance before it turned into a fiery red blur that charged into the distance. With just a few leaps, it disappeared from Su Ming's sight. Melancholy appeared in Su Ming's heart as that fiery red blur disappeared. He remained silent for a moment before he shook his head. He swept his gaze through the ravines and cracks on the ground before choosing one of them and jumping inside. He had to immediately start exercising his breathing to heal himself. The power contained in that palm strike from the old monster in the Berserker Soul realm had made him feel as if his organs were about to be crushed, and there was the fact about him pressing onward incessantly for several days as well. Su Ming would have collapsed if he had not swallowed a large amount of medicine. More importantly, his 4 berserker bones had cracked after that old monster from the Berserker Soul realm struck him. This, to Su Ming, was the most devastating blow. Su Ming opened up a temporary stone chamber to heal himself in that giant ravine on the plains, then sat in there and closed his eyes to begin exercising his breathing. Yet the moment he closed his eyes, he opened them immediately again. Right before his eyes, he saw a fiery red figure appearing at the exit of the stone chamber. It was the fire apt bared its teeth at Su Ming, then lifted its fist and waved it in the air before pointing outside, then began gesturing once again before finally rolling its eyes and leaning at the side as if it was angry. I know this is a desolate place. Fine. Continue staying by my side for the time being. When we reach a place that is not a wasteland, you can leave. Su Ming smiled and looked at the fire ape, then closed his eyes again. The battle Su Ming joined beyond Sky Mist City had ended, but the war was still ongoing. There was a new group of warriors assembling in the territories belonging to the two races. Perhaps it would not take too long before another battle started. Most of the people in Sky Mist City chose to remain silent about Su Ming's departure. It was as if everyone had unanimously chosen to not talk about this matter. The others also chose to not talk about the old berserker who went after Su Ming. An indescribable atmosphere had strangely surrounded the powerful berserkers within Sky Mist City. Qianlan Meng remained silent about this. No one knew exactly what she was thinking of. As for Su Ming's over 100 followers, Yang Bo, Zi Che, and the rest of them did not understand why Su Ming did such a thing. They, too, remained silent. The stone monument in Sky Mist City that recorded the berserkers' battle achievements would be renewed every single day as it recorded the achievements made by the berserkers. Su Ming was not up there, but there was a person called Yu Feng who had made it to the top 200. At that moment, there was a handsome young man with long black hair who gave off a strangely captivating air when he smiled standing underneath the stone monument in Sky Mist City. He was standing before the person from Sky Mist City who recorded battle achievements and was handing over a storage bag to that person. An additional 37 battle achievement points to Yu Feng, now ranked 198th. The person from Sky Mist City recording the battle achievements lifted his head and cast a glance at the black-haired man. Thank you. That strangely captivating man smiled. Then as he turned around to leave, he cast a glance in the direction of the land of the shamans. Master, what are you doing now? Are you being chased down by others? Heh, I can feel it. One of these days, I will surpass you and become the true fire berserker in the world. Chapter 365. Troubled. The land of the shamans appeared desolate to the eye. Most of the ground was grayish-black and greenery was seldom seen around the place. There was an air of depression around this place as if it was the source of death. The color of the sky was not blue either but gray, looking as if a dust storm had lifted up the sand on the ground and covered the sky. Compared to the land of the berserkers, the land of the shamans lacked vitality. Their land was filled with cracks and ravines. No one knew just how long those cracks had existed, neither did anyone know whether they were man-made or naturally caused when the earth shifted. There were only the sounds of the moaning wind around the area. The rest was dead silence. The few small creatures that lived in this sort of environment occasionally were the only signs of life on the land. In one of the walls of the gigantic ravines on the grayish-black mass of land was an incredibly secluded place. There was a large crack in there, and deep within that crack was a stone chamber that was made by man. Su Ming sat in there with his eyes closed and face pale as he slowly exercised his breathing. The fire ape squatted at the exit of the crack before him cautiously. Sometimes, it would turn its head around to look at him. Su Ming had already changed his bloody clothes and was wearing a black robe with his long hair spilling over his shoulders. The bracelet that formed by black smoke was circulating slowly on his right wrist. His index finger looked incredibly normal, the only thing off about it being the strand of hair wrapped several times around it. However, this was the finger that contained the power strong enough to shock those old monsters in the Berserker Soul Realm, and could even destroy the world. Time passed by gradually. After an unknown amount of time went by, Su Ming slowly opened his eyes. The instant he did so, a profound look appeared in his eyes, and his entire presence changed as well. He was like a huge ocean that could not be seen through when others looked at him. Bone Sacrifice Realm. Su Ming mumbled softly. He could clearly feel what was different within him now. On his spine, the 4 berserker bones shone with a blue light. It contained an explosive power, a power that not only allowed Su Ming to sense the invisible power in the world, it also made him become much stronger than he was when he was in the awakening realm. What was more, as of then, the cracks on the 4 berserker bones had mostly recovered. There were only 3 cracks left, and they would need some time before they were fully healed. It was by chance that I left the battlefield, but since this accident happened, It might also turn out to be a fortuitous event for me. I can increase my power here, and then leave to find that long-haired woman who appeared in the battlefield. That woman knows many things about destiny. Perhaps I can get some answers from her. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he lifted his right hand to touch the center of his brows. Wind immediately stirred up within his body. That wind seemed to be a part of him and was swirling about in his body. It looked like there was no pattern in its movements, only disorder, yet even so, it was enough to make Su Ming become much faster than before. It's a pity I don't know how to make this provenance of wind stronger. As Su Ming mulled over his thoughts, he brought out a crystal about the size of his fist from his storage bag. The instant he did so, wind started swirling about and moaning in the stone chamber. It came too suddenly, causing the fire ape to swiftly turn its head around. Once it saw what Su Ming was doing, it relaxed. Su Ming slowly pressed the wind crystal of inheritance against the center of his brows, but the instant the crystal touched his forehead, a strong repelling force spread from within it, as if it did not want to fuse with Su Ming no matter what. After a long while, Su Ming moved away his right hand with a dark face. He stared at the crystal in his hand and let out a cold harumph. "You won't acknowledge me, huh?" Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he put the crystal back into the storage bag and closed his eyes slowly. When he did so, the wind separation/art he obtained from the deity statue of Berserker Soul appeared in his head. This art was a unique legacy to the true divinity Wind Berserker. It was given to him separately from the crystal of inheritance, which clearly showed just how extraordinary this art was. Su Ming had obtained the whole entire art, and knew that there were only 3 styles to it. The first style was Sun Genesis. The second style was Lunar Burial. The third style was Wind Separation. These 3 styles in this wind-related divine ability gave Su Ming a feeling that they were filled with a tremendous power, but they were just like an illusion. He could only sense it, but could not touch it. The Crystal of Inheritance. Su Ming opened his eyes and frowned. He could tell that the reason why he could not explore the 3 styles was largely related to the fact that he had not fused with the Crystal of Inheritance. But since the 3 styles of wind separation were given to me as a separate legacy, then I might not necessarily need the Crystal of Inheritance to master them. As Su Ming continued mulling over his thoughts, his mind kept on going back to the 3 styles he obtained. Time passed by, and in the blink of an eye, it was already 3 days later. During those 3 days, Su Ming did not venture out. He stayed inside the stone chamber that served as his temporary lodgings, but he had no progress whatsoever. It was as if besides using the Crystal of Inheritance to learn it, there was no other shortcut for him to use if he could not fuse with the Crystal of Inheritance. Then the 3 styles of wind separation could only remain in his mind like an illusion. He could only sense it but could not get the details. In fact, even if he could sense the art, it remained as a vague and indistinct feeling in his mind. It was as if the 3 styles of wind separation were covered by a veil so that no one could see them clearly. It was during an afternoon after those 3 days when the meditating Su Ming suddenly opened his eyes. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he shot up from the ground. With a swing of his arm, the fire ape turned into a red light. Once Su Ming put it away, he charged out like a long arc, but he did not fly out of the ravine. Instead, he plunged down to the deeper parts before flying in another direction. When he charged out, Su Ming had also put on a straw hat that could cover his face along with a black robe, causing people to be unable to tell that he was a berserker at first glance. In the blink of an eye, he charged into the sky. Not long after he left, the air outside the ravine, which had served as his temporary lodgings for the past few days, suddenly distorted and a person walked out. That person's expression was incredibly dark, and there was a murderous air around him. That person was naturally the old man. It had been half a month since he chased Su Ming into the land of the shamans. Killing that shaman had wasted some of his time, and he had to spend some more time to heal the wound caused by the sword piercing through his chest when he was stunned by Su Ming using the power of the god of berserkers. If he did not possess a unique method to find Su Ming, he would have lost him a long time ago. Yet even so, Su Ming still managed to detect him beforehand every single time he came searching. He could have written it off with some random reason the first time, but now that it had happened again the second time, there was no way that the old man would not be able to know that there was still an unknown mystery to Su Ming. As expected of a true divinity who received the legacy. You're just in the middle stage of the bone sacrifice realm now, and you've already made me chase after you for so many days. If you had the chance to grow, then you might be able to reach the Berserker Soul Realm. You could have run much farther ahead, but you chose not to do so, as if you're trying to provoke me. You wait for me to catch up to you, then try to lure me to the deeper parts of the land of the shamans. HMH, you're not a shaman either. Doing this will do you no good either. The old berserker let out a cold snort. He closed his eyes, and after some time, as if he could see exactly where Su Ming had gone off to, he opened his eyes and turned into a long arc and flew off. Su Ming flew in the sky. His face covered by the bamboo hat was calm, but there was a murderous glare in his eyes. However, that person's level of cultivation was simply too high. Su Ming was not his opponent. It would be far too difficult if he wanted to kill this person without using the power of the god of berserkers. The only way Su Ming could think of was to use the shamans to kill this person. That was why he was flying deeper into the land of the shamans. He was certain that if he continued flying like this, he would definitely catch someone's attention. As for what he would do to hide his identity when the shamans arrived, Su Ming had already made preparations. Afternoon went by quickly. When the sun started shining with its last rays for the day in the horizon and twilight arrived, the old man was 200,000 feet behind Su Ming. The old man had consumed quite a large amount of medicinal liquid during the entire chase. It was fortunate that he had enough stored away, or else it would have been very difficult for him to maintain a high speed such as this. Due to the provenance of wind contained within Su Ming's body, not only was his speed extremely fast, he also wasted little of his energy. This was the power of the wind berserker. Su Ming might only be in control of a small part of it, but it was enough. However, even if it was so, Su Ming had still consumed a large amount of medicine. Nonetheless, his medicine was naturally of a much higher quality compared to the old man's. With the medicine balancing out the difference in the level of power between them, that was why the old man could only arrive at a distance 200,000 feet away from Su Ming even after the entire afternoon had gone by. If that had not been the case, with the huge difference of power between them, it would be entirely impossible for Su Ming to have run away for so many days. Even when he saw that the old man was already only 200,000 feet away from him, Su Ming remained calm. He sent his divine sense to scan the area behind him, then swiftly flew higher once again. With his speed, he instantly shot above the 9 heavens and arrived at the highest spot in the sky, where the endless gusts of wind were. The old man who was 100,000 feet behind him nearly cursed out loud the moment Su Ming flew upwards. His face was so dark that it was almost like ice that would never melt, and a sense of powerlessness rose within him. Over these days, every single time he nearly caught up to Su Ming, he would immediately fly up to the spot among the 9 heavens where the high wind was. While Su Ming's speed was not the slightest bit affected, the old man was forced to slow down. Once they were very far apart from each other, Su Ming would stop staying in the layer of the sky where the high wind was and would descend once again, then cause a huge ruckus at a lower altitude. He would cause loud, booming sounds as he moved forward, as if he was afraid others could not see him. Damn it! Anger burned in the old man's eyes and a great sense of helplessness rose in his heart. A few days ago, when he was chasing Su Ming down, he had cast an art that used up quite a lot of his power, causing him to instantly appear 80,000 feet from Su Ming, then launched an attack which he thought would almost definitely be able to strike him down, but Su Ming had endured through it. He might have ended up heavily injured, but the old man also came out of the encounter looking rather pathetic. From then onwards, Su Ming no longer gave him a chance to get within 80,000 feet of him. Usually, when he was 200,000 feet, he would immediately fly into the area where the high wind was. The old man also did not dare use that instant warp art of his anymore. That art used up too much of his power, but the main reason for him to not use that power was this: he was wary of Su Ming. The old man struggled over whether he should continue the chase.